I'm going to very briefly introduce myself. My name is Dean McCoubry. I work in marketing and storytelling, and indeed, we've got a pretty amazing story for you tonight. We have Mr. Nick Piechowski from First Tee and Adrian Queenan from ExpandaBrand. Adrian is just a touch older, in case you're wondering which one is which, although I don't think he necessarily thinks that he looks any older than Nick, which of course is exactly our wont, if that's what we want. So this evening, I would like to introduce you to the webinar, which is called Building Game Changers. And honestly, it's really fantastic for you to be able to join us. You know, for people to give up their time and to be able to give it over to webinars is something that is extremely valuable these days. It's never about the numbers, it's about the quality, who's on board, and what are the takeaways from the webinar that they can get. And so really, if you represent an NGO or you simply want to understand how mission-driven organizations can grow and thrive, I do think this is going to be a valuable one for you. To set a little bit of context, Mr. Queenan, Adrian here, is from ExpandaBrand, and they've been around for well over 25 years, I think it would be now. And they've supported global brands and NGOs alike with reliable, high-quality branding. And they really help them to look credible, attract attention, and create lasting impressions. And that helps to build community and trust, of course. And the purpose of this evening is to help tell these stories of these organizations, and not so much to have it as a selling thing for ExpandaBrand. It's actually just to talk about the relationships and what they've been able to do for organizations like yours. So it is a privilege to sit alongside these two partners. And I'm now going to introduce Nick, who is from First Tee, a youth development organization that uses golf as a tool to build resilience, character, and life skills in young people, which of course is something that lasts a lifetime, and I think is something that is very much in need in this era. Nick's been instrumental in shaping programs that link the values of golf, honesty, integrity, perseverance, with the skills that help young people succeed in school, relationships, and life. Very nice, Nick. Welcome. And thank you for being here. Adrian, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's dive into it. People are looking to hear, I think, very much your story, Nick, and let's start with you. Can you tell us about this program? How did it begin, and how has, excuse me, it made impact?
Yeah, absolutely, Dean. And it's great to be here, kind of speaking with you all tonight and today about this great partnership and the way that, you know, First Tee has used partners like ExpandaBrand who have been instrumental in just helping us to shape who we are as an organization, really down to our identity, down to our brand, one of the most powerful items that we have as a national organization. So as part of that, First Tee was founded in 1997. So you've got to go back a little over 25 years to the inception of our organization, which was really chartered with the mandate of growing the game of golf and expanding access to the great game of golf and everything that it has to offer to young, to kids, particularly those in underserved, under-resourced communities across the country. So we, came together under the leadership of, at the time, PGA Tour Commissioner Tim Finchem, and the support of the 5 major governing bodies in golf here in the United States. So the PGA Tour, the PGA of America, Augusta National, LPGA, and the USGA, who really all came forward to support and to launch this great initiative in this First Tee program. But it was really only a few years into our organization's history that we realized that First Tee could do so much more than introduce the game of golf. Yes, that is at the heart of what we do, golf and junior golf especially, but more importantly, found within the game. And whether you play golf or you've not, there are great life skills and lessons that you can learn on the course. In so many ways, golf is a great metaphor for life. And it was really in that seamless integration of First Tee's life skills curriculum with the game and the way that we bring those things together that we're able to have an impact, on young people across the country and now internationally, across our 150 First Tee chapters, the 10,000 plus schools that we're found in, 1,600 golf courses across the world, that we've really been able to make that tremendous impact. It's just that great integration of golf skills and life skills to impact young people and to help them become game changers in their communities.
Those are some pretty big numbers, and they really are incredibly impressive. And obviously the building of momentum from the beginning up is something that must have taken a huge amount of work. Can you tell us a bit about that? And also, we'll bring Adrian in when that journey started and how you were able to help them at the beginning of that journey. So I'll leave you two to open that up like old friends.
Absolutely. Well, Adrian has been a longtime friend to the First Tee, and their ExpandaBrand has really helped us to grow, especially when you look at the national organization and how we create and build a brand. Certainly, we've got 150 incredible chapters doing amazing work in their communities, and we're all unified under this kind of First Tee brand, this family that really helps to coalesce the life skills and the identity that we have as an organization. And really, what has allowed us to grow is to have that kind of consistency of an organization now across the chapters and the communities that we are. And it's Adrian and his team have been working with us for a number of years through rebrands, through new logos, through all of that to really help create that level of identity where if you're with the First Tee of Chicago and you and your family move to where we are here in North Florida now, when you show up to that First Tee North Florida clubhouse, you have that familiarity, that kind of same brand, that messaging that pulls through across the country and across our footprint.
And Adrian, I mean, what did that look like as a partner? I mean, you've been witness to something that's quite astonishing, really.
I think the best thing for me to do is to go back to my lifelong journey in golf. So I was a naughty kid, and my folks liked to keep me occupied for hours at a time, and golf's one of those sports. What intrigued me about golf is where it's different to most other sports is that you call penalties on yourself. And so a friend of my dad's had some golf clubs lying around in the garage, gave them to me. In fact, I still have them. That's how much of an impact they had on me. I still have those clubs. And I don't still use them just for any golfers watching, but I do still have them. And the concept of calling a penalty on yourself at first is quite foreign. But then it instilled in me a whole different value set that's really mapped me out for the rest of my life. And I look at, when I first started watching golf in this country years ago, and First Tee started to make an appearance, I thought, I really like what I'm seeing here. And so we started working with chapters probably as early as 2012, and we would just sort of slowly try and pick them off one at a time, and we'd phone them, and sometimes there's no budget, but the relationship built, and then we attracted the attention of headquarters. And so I met Guy Garbarino probably 2013 or 14. He said, how are you doing all of this? How are you going and building these relationships with the chapters? And we said, well, we're just kind of going one at a time. He said, well, tell me how you got into this. And I told him my story with golf. And he said, I think we should partner up. We should form some kind of partnership. And they had tools for how they worked with their partners in place, but we didn't really fit into that mold. So we designed something that was bespoke for us. And then the rest is history. I mean, just the impact that we've been able to bring to the organization is something we're very proud of, and also an honor to work with a company that does, or an organization that does so much good work.
I mean, let's talk a little bit about that work next from you, Nick. I mean, there's many organizations that are trying to help kids to deepen their skills, but not as many trying to deepen their life skills. And ironically, in an AI and a tech-driven world, these life skills are so deeply important and, of course, last a lifetime. Take us in a little bit more into how sport, and specifically golf, enables kids to build these life skills, and by all means share, any stories that you have or anecdotes which are really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in general, sport can be such a powerful tool for youth development, and specifically, for us at First Tee, who believe wholeheartedly in the power of the game of golf. When you're on on the course, everything from what Adrian was speaking about to kind of the honesty and the integrity that, is required when you're scoring yourself, or, how you recover. This for me is a big one. It's like, how do you recover after a bad shot? Because I hit a lot of bad shots when I'm on the course, right? So that perseverance, that confidence, that resiliency, again, it's such a metaphor for life in so many ways of, you hit a great, drive right off the tee box, and then, you're in the middle of fairway, you chunk your next shot, you're off in the rough. How do you continue to kind of recover from that? And, there's so many elements and aspects of the game that can really be used to teach young people, life skills and everything. And so it's really thanks to, our chapters and the work that they do in developing, these young people and putting this program on, and the coaches that they work with, the volunteers, the coaches who are really trained in this program and in this model of positive youth development, and are able to create that seamless bridge and that transition from golf skills to life skills, and transfer those from the golf course to school, to families, to, beyond for the young people that we serve. I think for me, it's always so special to kind of get to see it in action. I was up in Minneapolis earlier this summer for one of our national participant events and opportunities, where we had 80-something First Tee teams from across the country, stellar young people who were up there for a leadership academy, our Game Changers Academy. And yes, golf was definitely part of it, but more importantly are kind of the life skills that they're developing, the sessions that they're in on building positive self-identities, on creating communities. And you see that play out when you've got, again, 80 kids, teenagers, they come in, they haven't met each other. They don't know each other, but within just a few days, they become kind of lifelong friends. The relationships that are formed just because of that underlying bond of First Tee and their love for the game of golf is just such a powerful experience.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of that journey, when did you feel? I mean, this is, I think, is probably important for the audience here. Is when did you feel like you had something? What was it in First Tee where the idea of sport and life skills were going to click together and kind of take flight?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, again, it was really early on in that when, as our programs were starting to launch, that we really found that kind of magic. For me personally, coming into the organization, I've been with First Tee for about 5 years now. When I came into it, I've been in the nonprofit sector for my entire career, give or take 15 years now. I've worked in youth development, had worked in healthcare. But for me, kind of coming into it from as a non-golfer and really getting out there to kind of see my first program session, where you're watching the ways that these coaches are interacting with the young people on the golf course. And yes, they're helping them, with their swing, with their chipping, whatever they're working at the day. But the relationships that these coaches build, the mentorship that they provide, you can see it's something really special. And that was kind of a really powerful moment for me personally, kind of in my career coming into the organization.
Adrian, for you, how do you support something like that? How in tracking that journey, they have some storytelling to do, and the success of that marketing or that halo which people look at of the brand. How did you tackle that journey? What is the role that you play?
I think in the early days it came down to, as to Nick's point a minute ago, he was saying the coaches are the ones that are interacting with the kids. A lot of those guys that run the chapters are also coaches or were ex-coaches in when they first started out with First Tee. And so a lot of them don't necessarily know how to market themselves, don't necessarily understand the brand guidelines as they change and evolve over time. And so they may not understand the importance of creating an environment where a child feels like they can trust it, and more importantly, a parent feels like they can trust the environment they're sending their kids into. And so that's where we see our role and how we've been able to introduce those concepts without coming off as overbearing, and there to support. And to actually go to one of these facilities and see the kids At first, sometimes the ones that have been there for the first time, a little bit nervous, and then you see them relax into it, and then they're grinning and running around, and just the joy. It takes me back to when I first started playing golf. There's not much joy in it now. The body's getting old, but the mind still thinks it can do what it could do 30 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, golf. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Adrian, I think you brought up such a kind of powerful point there when you talk about trust. And when we talk about partnerships and the way that we as a first tee organization work with our partners like ExpandaBrand, but more importantly, when we talk about how we work with the families that bring their kids to first tee, it's really built on that element of trust. That first tee is an organization that is going to do what we say we're going to do. We are about instilling in young people great values and life skills through golf. And ExpandaBrand shows up so powerfully in that if you are a parent of a 7-year-old and you're bringing your kid to a first tee program for the first time, or you are a golfer who's been signed up to play in a scramble at your local first tee chapter to help raise money, it's that moment, that first kind of moment that you see and experience the first tee brand is often because of ExpandaBrand. It's because you see the way that they bring our brand to life on kind of the signage and the visuals that we place. I was out in Atlanta last week for the PGA Tour Championship doing some stuff with the first tee of Metro Atlanta. I was helping them kind of set up their ExpandaBrand signs. And sorry, Adrian, not to make this too much of a plug, but the signs were great. But we were placing them, and I was really thinking about that moment as you're coming into that tournament, and you kind of see the way that brand comes to life. You see what we really hope. The brand is a reflection of our identity as an organization, from kind of that fun, the fun playfulness of the colors and the logo and the icon and what it stands for. It really helps to kind of create that level of kind of trust in the organization and where you are and what you're showing up to do.
I mean, I'm quite fascinated by this idea of trust. I think I'm trying to work out whether it is something that we take for granted and we all talk about in marketing and don't really realize that it's very hard to build trust over time. What do you think the important aspects are around, and it could be a marketing thing, it could be a relationship thing, it could be an integrity thing. Let's talk a little bit more around trust. And I mean, it certainly seems like you've done a phenomenal job in being able to build trust since 1997, I think it is. So what are the intrinsics of building trust?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about, again, the way that I work, so, for first tee, I work on a lot of our national partnerships and our national relationships with, organizations like, Adrian and ExpandaBrand. To me, that trust shows up in the way that we work, in the way that we understand each other, in the way that we develop authentic relationship, to the point where our communications team, they know that anything that they're going to see that Adrian is sending over for approval has been, well vetted, because he understands our brand guidelines and our organization, better than us at times. I think he understands our brand better than me, certainly. And so it's, again, that level of intentionality, that he's put in and that many of our partners put into our program and into understanding who we are as an organization, and that we put in understanding kind of who they are and what they need, and the way that we can kind of find those layers of crossover and alignment that show up in really powerful ways.
Adrian?
I think there's almost like a subliminal element as well. So there's all the things that the things that are obvious, like doing what you say you're going to do, showing up on time, having a great quality product. All of those things are a given in a relationship, a trust relationship. But there's also an additional element in terms of how you feel when you're working with someone. Whether you feel that there's integrity there, or if there's a real relationship. It's not just a relationship based on some kind of financial arrangement. And I think that's where the parents, if you think about parents coming and bringing their 7-year-old in to a facility, they may not, if it looks really good and impressive, they feel comfortable, and there is that sort of subliminal influence. And then they meet the coach, and then the coach is really cool with the kids. And so now there's an added element. So it's almost like layers of an onion, and they just stack up on top of each other. Whether it's that trust relationship with the kids and the parents with the program, or a business relationship. I think there's all those facets in it.
In terms of for the audience out there, what have been the experiences along the journey, the marketing experiences that have helped you to elevate the brand? It could be social media. This is not a branding question at all. It's, what have been some of have you enjoyed virality, for example, and how did you get that? Or was it testimonial based, kids sharing real stories? What really latched on in storytelling for you, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. From a first tee perspective, we really try to anchor our communications in marketing style in really the impact of what we do as it shows up in as we call it, the name and the faces of the participants that we serve, the young people that our chapters are reaching, and really, telling the story through them. So, if we have, as opposed to just, your typical logo soup of, hey, here's a bunch of different companies that have done things. Thank you all so much, right? It's, this organization, they're funding a specific program. We might mention that, but more importantly, we want to talk about the impact of the young people that they've had, that they've experienced. Again, this is something we just kind of went through out at East Lake for Tour Championship. Really, when the focus becomes the participant, the young person, the life skills that they've learned, the experiences that they've unlocked through their participation in First Tee, through what they've gained and they've taken from that program, that's such a more powerful story than any amount of, anything really else that we can do. And so really when we kind of keep that as the focal point of how we show up and how we tell stories, I think has been a really powerful way, to message our brand and our mission and our organization.
Adrian, has that played a role in anything that you've had to make for them? I'm just intrigued by that, in terms of, you guys, when I spoke to you in preparing for this, you guys had mentioned the importance of the way in which certain items of marketing or branding material kind of had created an environment which ends up being photographed, for example, which then has a viral load or can become viral because somebody shares this moving story of impact, but we forget that what's sitting in the background here, if you took it out, it would just be a video of somebody talking about impact. But against the backdrop of credibility or something that I remember in my mind, it becomes additionally powerful. Do you get asked for specific aspects of branding in order to try and catch attention? Or is it just, it's about grandeur of branding?
I think if you look across the chapter network, you've got chapters that are larger and have better funding, and you've got smaller ones that have less funding. And typically the guys that have more funding will go for that grand approach. And then the smaller ones, where I see our role really playing out, is to help them have the most impact with the least amount of budget that they have available to them. So it sort of varies by chapter. And Belinda, that looks after First Tee for us, she has to understand the workings of the tiny chapters and the larger ones, and understand that sometimes those larger chapters think that because they've got big benefactors, they don't have to follow the rules as much as, the brand guideline rules as much as maybe the smaller guys do. And so she has to have this ability to persuade them that the rules are in there to work for everybody and guide them accordingly. So I think there's certainly, without the backdrop, without the branding being visible, it does take a piece away from the viral video. But I think the main star of the video is typically, or picture, whatever it happens to be, is typically the interaction between child and coach, children with each other, and that joy that you see on everybody's face. That's the thing that makes something go viral. The branding is in the background, just supporting it. It's more of a
it's interesting. What shines through is we're talking about these things of trust and authenticity and impact. It's so funny because so many of them are non-technical, and we live in this explosive era of technology and AI. But actually, the deep substance is coming from humanity and real stories and so on. Let's talk about that. I think people would probably say, would love to ask a question of Nick, and I must have a look to see if there are questions. There is one that's just come in. I'll ask this one actually, because it's similar to the one that I was going to ask. It says, for smaller non-profits just starting out, what is one value they should embed early to build long-term trust?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just the way that you kind of show up. I think whether you're a large or a small organization, I think when you really show up with the mission first and kind of leading with that at the heart of everything, that you're doing, of like the impact. Here's the impact that we're creating in the community. And it could be, the smallest community in rural Nebraska, or it could be on behalf of a national organization, right? At that point, like the scale, to me, as a fundraiser, I've worked in, again, philanthropy for my entire career. And whether I'm asking for $100 from a donor or $1 million from a donor, right? The overall, the number doesn't really matter, right? It's just understanding that individual and your ability to craft that story and to demonstrate and to showcase that impact that you're having that really resonates and connects with people. Again, if you're, a family giving $100 or a billionaire giving $1 million at one point, right? It's all the same. It's just how you're able to convey that message and demonstrate and showcase that impact.
Very nice. Adrian.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the first thing to do is, like we were talking about mission, being mission driven. And I think sometimes if you look at our product in particular, a lot of smaller startup philanthropic organizations have a tendency to look at, I don't need to do this, or I'm not big enough to do this yet. But if you're creating collateral, whether it be on social media or whatever happens to be, at least have something where you get the biggest bang for your buck. It can be a relatively cheap device, but if it's done beautifully, it can be repurposed in multiple different ways, doesn't have to cost you much, but it looks like. It's not that you want to come off like you got lots of money, but you want to look like you care. And that what you're setting up is important for you.
Yeah.
Again, there's an idea of care. Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, Adrian, to that point, really, it comes down to that level of consistency with the brand and understanding that, your brand as an organization is really kind of the front door for many folks when they experience, especially those visual elements when they're walking up, whether it's however your organization is positioned, but like that brand, that logo, that's the first thing they're going to see. So how is that consistently replicated across, whether you're a small nonprofit or a national nonprofit with 150 chapters, right? How are you kind of consistently delivering the brand in ways that, again, creates and enhances credibility and authenticity with your audiences?
And I have another question, which, and both of you could answer this. Certainly, Nick, from your experience, and Adrian, from what you've delivered. The question is what are 1 to 2 ways small non-profit teams can visually express their values without a big budget?
Adrian, I may let you have the first crack at that one with your expertise there.
I think it's, as I said earlier, it's about creating or using pieces that can be repurposed in multiple ways. So very often you're looking for photo opportunities, some kind of backdrop, right? So whether it be social media, whether it be marketing collateral you're going to put on your website, whatever it is, you're going to want to have the brand in the background. So whether it's a step and repeat banner, some kind of pull-up banner, a plain banner in the background, so long as it's nicely done and not flapping around and frayed on the edges and things like that, you can do it for a couple of $100, and then you can go, well, even less. And then you can go from there and say, right, I can now put this as I get more money in and I want to make a bigger impact. You can put other pieces with it, and now you've got a kit. And then you go around to various places and you've got that kit built up over time. But I'd start with a backdrop.
And when I think too about that event kit, I think one of my favorite pieces that we pull up to really, tell our story are those kind of pull-up banners. And it's not just a bunch of white space, and there's a logo and like a mountain of text being like, here's our full mission statement and here's our tax ID number and everything on it, right? But it's a photo. It's a photo of a kid with a golf club or something like that. That really, again, a picture says what, 1,000 words or whatever the cliche is there, right? But like it's true. It's such a much more powerful element when it's a photo kind of pulled up life size. It's got our logo, kind of some branding behind it. But again, I think that is such a more powerful way to tell that story than again just here's a bunch of words.
We've cut down the home straight on.
Sorry,
yes, go ahead.
Dean, just to step in there. What I have seen often is, to Nick's point, is I want to get all of my positioning onto as much of the branding face as possible, and then you end up with something which has a whole lot of text on it. And really, it is about simplicity when starting out. The other stuff's important to your organization, but for clarity, if it's too busy, the backdrop's too busy, you're standing in front of it and you're having pictures taken, people are just overwhelmed. So yes, simplicity works.
It seems like there can be a bit of a balance, or a battle, I should say, between information and emotion in a way. And I mean, emotion often carries more power, but I think sometimes we don't realize that how much power it does have because we feel compelled to share that information. Tell me, we're down the home straight, and it feels like you guys are very comfortable with each other. You clearly have done, as you said, 10, 15 years. What would you say about partnership and the importance of partnership when you're trying to pull off these really important initiatives? What does partnership do?
Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, for us, when we talk about partnership, it has an amplifying effect, right? It's really that 1 + 1 can equal 3 when you put the right people in the right spots who have that shared mission and that shared alignment. And so for us, again, as we're talking about building partnerships at a First Tee organization, it's finding the organizations who share our values, who believe in the work that we do, that we're able to develop those authentic relationships, and we both care, and it can again have such an amplifying, lasting effect. I mean, Adrian, he's put up with us. He's stuck around for over a decade now, and I like to think again, some of it is certainly his experience with golf had led him to First Tee, but I think he's hopefully, and I'll let him speak for himself there too, but stuck around to some degree because of that relationship and that shared vision and alignment that we have.
Yeah, I think for me, partnership's about, we talk about the amplification effect that Nick was referring to. I think also there's another element in that it's about both parties walking away with value. And both parties feel like they got something out of this relationship. And it's more than just, as I've said before, a financial transaction or a business transaction. There's a good feeling. It really is, it feels powerful to me to be associated with people that are doing such good work. It's us as an organization. That's how we are. We endeavor to do as much good in the world as we can through all our associations. And to work with other people that are doing the same thing is extremely rewarding. And so you walk away with the amplification effect, but also that feel good. And, there's, I guess, stuff beyond value.
Absolutely. I'm going to take us down to a final statement now. I'm keen really for you to close up actually any way you really would wish. I would imagine an audience that's traveling a similar journey to you would be keen to extract any other takeaways that they might be able to get in terms of your experiences along the journey, maybe the things that were tough and how you had to get yourselves back up, or maybe key successes. But if you could share something, even if it's a few things, what is it that you would say to others in a very similar position, seeking to have partnerships like this and gain the type of impact that you have achieved as a partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to kind of go here first. And really, again, kind of just speaking through more of my kind of personal and career experience, to me, fundraising and nonprofits, it's all about, relationships. It's about kind of, again, finding those right people, building real relationships with them. I know that's helped me kind of throughout my entire career, through the ups and downs of it, and, the great fundraising years and the kind of the bad fundraising years, all of that. It just comes down to kind of the people that, I've been able to surround myself with, kind of the mentors, the great partners. Again, I ended up at, First Tee here in this role because of a relationship I made very early on in my career, when I had no idea where life was going to take me, a year from then, let alone, 15. So it really comes down to kind of finding those people who share the mission and the values that you have as an individual, that you have as an organization, that you're looking for in a partner. And just great things can happen when those things come together.
I think from my perspective, being in the event space, events are time bound. They're not moving because we couldn't get stuff out of an airline, or we couldn't make it on time, or FedEx lost a box. The event's not changing, right? And so for us, we've always got to have some kind of plan B, some other way around of handling an issue like that, but also having open communication channels and calling stuff out early. If we think there's going to be a problem, that's on this side of the fence. That's the most important thing for me to deliver in this relationship. Is First Tee should never at any point be thinking, can these guys deliver? Will they? There needs to be a level of consistency and professionalism that is just, it's there. It's in the background, but it's there. And that builds solid partnerships. That again, it gets back all the way to the beginning of the conversation we started with trust.
Which is an interesting loop for us to close on. The striking thing for me, and it really is striking, is how we've spoken about, I work in a very digital and tech world, and it just kept coming back to relationship, listening, partnership. You've used the words care, deep care, you mentioned earlier. These are deeply and highly important human aspects. And these are the very things that First Tee is helping kids with. And yet later on in our lives, as you said, and you started with Adrian, what were some of the things that a game like golf taught you? They're still lasting now, while Adrian, you must be 45 or something like that. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever your
Plus
age
tariffs.
is. Yeah. So and I think it's amazing to think that coming on to a webinar like this, and you leave with partnerships are deeply valuable, being human, having a shared intent or a mutual purpose, to find those right partners. Nick mentioned the importance of the mentors that he had, and the way in which people pull together. It's so incredibly important, our humanity in this crazy AI world. And so I'd really want to thank you both for this experience. I didn't know where we were going to head, and we came right back to the beginning, to where we wanted to a direct link to Nick, to the amazing work that you do. Yeah. I have to work with children and to give them life skills that will last a lifetime. I tip my hat to you, sir. I really
we certainly tip our hat in terms to our incredible chapters, their leaders, our coaches, our volunteers across the country. We are just a very small part here at First Tee headquarters of a much larger, grander movement, and of course, made possible by Adrian, ExpandaBrand, and many of our great partners as well. So,
well done, Team Expander and First Tee. And I think very much, there is an opportunity for you, anybody that is listening, that may seek to reach out to be able to speak with Nick or with Adrian to discuss the things that you are either grappling with or hope for. These clearly are good humans and good individuals working very hard towards making a difference and making impact. And so please do reach out to them respectively, and we will close up this webinar and let you know that, of course, we will share that recording and any other additional resources that may accompany from each brand. And we hope to invite you back to another ExpandaBrand webinar with another dynamic individual, just like Mr. Nick Piechowski. And so thank you wherever you are in the world today. A big thank you for giving us your time. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.